Hey everybody, today I'm going to be showing you guys how to play Werewolf Companion Druid in Season 9. So first off, the main change is they nerfed Mjolnir Ring. So if you followed any of my previous videos, I was running Mjolnir Ring in previous seasons for this build. But it's 20 to 40%, it was 80 to 100, so there's not really a reason to run Mjolnir Ring anymore. They also made it to where you can cast Companion skills and Grizzly Rage. And on top of that, they made it to where Grizzly Rage gives you Perma Unstoppable. On top of it gives you 100% damage amp, so it's already just pretty good in general with all these bonuses. So I think this is going to end up being the way to go. People were running Petrify before if they weren't running Cataclysm, and that was because it reset cooldowns and all that stuff. But now it's like you get pretty much what you get from Petrify, but in Grizzly Rage in terms of the critical strike damage buff, because you can get Aspect of the Rampaging Werebeast, which gives us a 60% multiplicative damage amp. This one is 50%, so unless there's some back-end reason where it applies the damage differently, which would ultimately just kind of be a bug, I'm going to say Grizzly Rage is going to be the better way to go this season for companions. I did try the Direwolf aspect, however, we lost a bunch of tankiness because there's just a lot of, like Iron Fur and stuff like that happens. You also don't get the 20% damage reduction buff from Grizzly Rage. So you just lose a lot of tankiness, and you don't really get a whole lot of damage because you don't get the cool overpower stuff like you get when you're in Werebear form. So ultimately, I think the Wolf version is a little bit worse. You also have to drop a Legendary aspect, which makes it even harder. So I don't recommend going Direwolf's aspect Grizzly Rage. I think the Werebear one is going to be better because since you're unstoppable all the time, you can just do Rushing Wilds here anyway on your boots, which is going to make up for the movement speed, which is the only upside, I think, to the Direwolf aspect. And I guess the healing was also pretty nice, but again, it's not like 100% necessary. So I tested out both versions, and ultimately I think the bear version is going to end up being better. But let's go ahead and hop on into the build now. So Aspect of Might on the helmet, so cooldown reduction, max life, Wolves Debilitating Roar, cooldown reduction, and Wolf attack speed. On the chest piece, we have armor, max life, resist all, wolf attack speed, debilitating roar, and we have spirit bond aspect. I am trying to kind of maximize my debilitating roar uptime, so you can see it's only 12.3 seconds because I have these things on my gear. That being said, if you run a Holocron Crest here, that'll make it even easier. So when it comes to Ubers, it's going to be the helm and the chest slot. But typically, you're only going to find you probably just want to run one because you'll end up losing like defense or some type of stat that's very important if you try to run both of these. So you can go Harlequin Crest if you want more cooldown reduction, give you more consistent uptime on Debilitating Roar. You can go Air of Perdition if you just want more damage. And then on the chest piece, it's kind of a similar thing where like Tyrael's Might gives you more defense. Shroud of False Death is going to give you more damage. So those are going to be your two options. I'd say those are going to be your two options there for a chest piece. So that's pretty all right if you want to put Ubers in, but it's not necessary. Like this build right here is pretty much the starter build, and it's also going to be the final build now that all these with the changes and how things are going this season, what it's looking like. So pretty good win, I think, in terms of not needing a bunch of uniques or anything to make this build work. But we're going Yule's on. The reason for this is because we're going bear form. We're going to be overpowering anyway. And we have things like Dominate in our Paragon. So this is going to help us keep Dominate up longer. So pretty solid overall, I think. Especially considering we're just going to be spamming our cooldowns nonstop. So we should be proccing this a decent amount. On our gloves, we're going Moonrage aspect. This gives us extra wolves. +3 ranks to wolves. We're going crit damage, willpower, critical strike chance. The reason we go crit damage on here, which might seem odd, is just because we have so many crit damage multipliers. So, 60%, 40%. I believe I have another one in the Paragon node. There's just a lot of crit damage multipliers. So you get a lot of value out of running crit damage that you wouldn't normally get if you didn't have like Avian Wrath and Rampaging Werebeast. Yeah, and then I go ahead and I put the greater affix on critical strike chance just to try to keep our crit chance as high as possible because our pack leader procs on crits. So, and it also just keeps our DPS consistently higher if we have higher crit. Moving right along to the pants, Storm's Companion. This turns our wolves into a storm skill. It also buffs our pack leader. So this says 67% down here. That would only be 25% if we didn't have Storm's Companion on. So keep that in mind. It's what makes our wolves and our ravens perma reset. It also gives us +10 ranks to wolves. You can see here I have 34 ranks to wolves. That's kind of hilarious. Pretty comical, honestly. Yeah, go ahead and try to get your greater affects on wolves, and then just try to get all the ranks to wolves, and you get a nice damage boost. And then we're putting Nagu Set as our rune words here. So summoning a spirit wolf companion to attack enemies. This just gives you a bunch of these like little spirit wolf things. It combos with our shepherd's aspect, where we get more damage per companion, because you'll see that the spirit wolf has the companion tag specifically. So yeah, it's a massive damage boost, and even a defense boost once you get this this little combo up and running. So it's very, very nice. Aspect of the Rushing Wilds. So because we're unstoppable, we don't need to run like a Metamorphosis aspect or anything like that anymore. We can just run movement speed. Just run movement speed, right? And we need the movement speed because we have the Feral Aptitude passive, so we need to be at 100%. Max life, move speed, resist all, wolf attack speed, movement speed. And again, when it comes to the resist all, you'll have to kind of figure out whichever way you want to go about it. But I was finding that just throwing resist all here and here is what was helping me get to the cap easier. So, moving on to the weapon, we have willpower, crit damage, max life, grizzly rage duration, and chance for wolves to deal double damage. Oh, and if I didn't point it out yet, grizzly rage duration on the gloves as well. This is going to be what helps us keep our grizzly rage up, and then our wolves dealing double damage is obviously just pretty goated. Now, when it comes to the greater affix on this, you can go. I think finding something with max life and willpower are both kind of equally good. Willpower kind of helps you out in the Paragon, because in the later boards you need like 2,500 willpower to be able to hit all of those bonuses. So, but you know, max life is also really good in itself. Then we do crit damage here, and again, the reason why I did crit damage, I saw some people were like, you know, putting their rune words on their weapons. I just feel like we get a lot of value out of crit damage for this specific setup of having all these crit damage multipliers, so I opted to be able to put the crit damage on my weapon. But yeah, then we have Shepherd's Aspect on it, so we're getting 26% increased damage per companion skill, which adds up to be a ton, because I think we have like, let's see, 4, 5, 9, 3 from Moon Rage, 12, plus 3 from Poison Creeper, like 16, and then you get like 6 to 7 of these Spirit Wolves out at one time. You have like over 20 companions out at pretty much any given time. Yeah, when it comes to like, you don't see all of them, right? So summon 5 ravens to fly above you, or the Poison Creeper ones you don't see, so you really only see the wolves, but you technically have like 20 plus companions out all the time, which is pretty nice. So moving on to the amulet, so we have Aspect of the Alpha. So this is going to turn our wolves into werewolf companions. They're going to deal 210% additional damage, and they're going to spread rabies. We're going to go Envenom, Call the Wild, total armor, grizzly rage duration, grizzly rage cooldown reduction. So the total armor is kind of a flex slot. It's not on this calculator yet, but this is going to give you 30% more armor when you get to rank 5. So you might be able to kind of change. You might be able to kind of change this stuff around a little bit and change this to like willpower or like percent willpower or something like that, depending on how your gear drops go and how much armor you need, etc., etc. But yeah, pretty solid. We get 3 ranks to Envenom. That gives us an extra 30% bonus critical strike damage against enemies. Again, why critical strike damage is so good with this build specifically. So it just has so many multipliers in it for it. Next up, we have Aspect of the Rampaging Werebeast. This is going to increase our duration. It's going to give us a 60% multiplicative critical strike damage buff. And then willpower, critical strike damage, crit chance, grizzly rage duration, grizzly rage cooldown reduction. And then onto the last ring. And then I'll go over the gems I'm going to put on them. So gain 1 additional companion. And companions deal 35% more damage. Crit chance, willpower, critical strike damage. Grizzly rage duration, grizzly rage cooldown reduction. Now for the gems, the special seasonal gems, 20% more elemental damage, and you take 10% more. This one, after you injure or kill an enemy, your summons are going to deal 50% more damage. They actually buffed this to do 50% on the final patch notes. And then get 6% primary core stat, 8% max life, and unhindered, and you get hunted, but who cares? You get hunted by these jewel guardians, but it's really not a big deal. So those are going to be your gems that are going to be pretty solid. Moving on to the spirit boons, we have Wariness, Avian Wrath, Scythe Talons, Pack Leader, and Combo for the Storm. 50% damage reduction from Elise is good. 40% more crit damage, 15% more crit chance. You can see I have like 90% crit chance here. Pack Leader, 67% chance to reset the cooldowns of my companion skills. Solid. Combo for the Storm. If in the event your Grizzly Rage drops, you'll notice this actually procs a lot. I think they changed the way lucky hits and companions interact, or they fixed it, because it seemed like this was just proccing way more on the PTR than what it was in previous seasons. So, yeah. Okay, so that's it for the gear. Moving on to the skills. So we have Maul, Enhanced Maul, Fierce Maul. We have Pulverize with Primal Pulverized for it to deal 20% reduced damage. The whole, overpower doesn't really matter. Iron Fur does, oh my gosh, you gain 12% damage reduction while in Werebear form. Hopefully you guys can't hear that train. I'll have to go back and look at that, but yeah. Iron Fur, you gain 12% damage reduction while in Werebear form. This bonus is going to persist for 3 seconds after leaving, but you'll have it up pretty much all the time. So there's a bunch of damage reductions. Like right here alone is like 32% damage reduction. Pretty solid. Then we have Debilitating Roar, Enhanced Debilitating Roar, Innate Debilitating Roar, Ancestral Fortitude, Vigilance, and Backlash. So this is going to give us 15% damage reduction after we use a defensive skill. This is going to give us 12% increased damage after using defensive skill. While this is active, we get 25% increased damage. And then it also fortifies us. Only a 12-second cooldown, so not bad. This is going to be kind of a higher cooldown at first until you get the gear. But if you get lucky and you're able to get Harlequin Crest early, I would recommend running a Harlequin Crest until you actually get like kind of all your ducks in a row stat-wise. Harlequin Crest is definitely going to make this feel a lot better, especially if you can manage to get one early on just by finishing. Because I know like getting the first Uber unique, all you have to do is like finish the season journey, etc. You don't have to do anything super crazy to get the first one, or farm or do a crazy amount of farming. So yeah, so wolves, enhanced wolf pack, brutal wolf pack, 25% more damage to mobilize, stun, slowed, or poisoned enemies. When you critically strike, your wolves are going to get a bunch of attack speed. I didn't find this to be necessary because we get so much fortify from Grizzly Rage. Nature's Reach gives us more damage whenever we're attacking things from a distance, or if they're slowed, stunned, knocked back, which everything shouldn't get slowed because we have Neurotoxin and rabies is going to spread to everything, so everything should be slowed quite frequently. Feral Aptitude, 18% damage buff for healthy, and then another 9% for healthy, 9% if we're above 100% movement speed, and 18% if you have both. Companion skills deal 120% extra damage, and that's because of our amulet over here. Ravens, enhanced ravens, so you have 8% increased crit chance for enemies that are hit by ravens. So keep in mind, with that up, that means you have a 98% crit chance. With this current build, you pretty much are critting literally every time. There's a 2% chance for you to not crit with this setup. And then Brutal Ravens, 2 additional Ravens periodically attack things. The reason we run it is just for the extra 2 companions for our Shepherds. Then we have Mending, Provocation. So when you remain in Werebear form for at least 12 seconds, your next non-defensive skill is going to overpower. So you want to pay attention to this because it'll give you a nice overpower buff with your wolves. I know it's actually an interesting interaction because you can snapshot it with ravens to make your ravens proc perma overpower, which is kind of interesting. Neurotoxin, Envenom, so you and your companions get 60% bonus crit damage, pretty solid. They changed Toxic Claws to just do extra poison damage, not really relevant. It's actually going to get buffed on the final patch notes, but it's not really relevant to us. Nature Magic skills do 12% increased damage. This is a Nature Magic skill when we have Storm's Companion on. Catastrophe, 10% extra damage after using your ultimate skill for 8 seconds. It's just kind of, I don't know, I was just like, I was kind of running out of thoughts on what to put it on. I guess you could also just, well, it says shapeshift into new animal form. It's like you don't really shapeshift, so like it's just really awkward. I guess you technically could like do this if you wanted to. and just get 6% more damage reduction since you're going to be in Grizzly Rage all the time. But yeah. But I just had that in there because you just kind of have 2 points that are just a little awkward on what to do with. I guess you could also put it into Mending, so just to get more max life or something like that. And then, yeah, so after that we have Defensive Posture, 9% damage reduction while fortified. Then we have Grizzly Rage, Prime Grizzly Rage, Supreme Grizzly Rage, and then one with Nature. Companion skills, you're going to gain 1 additional companion and deal 80% increased damage on top of gaining the passive effect of all of them. So you just always have, so even though you don't have any points into Poison Creeper, you're still going to have a Poison Creeper out along with the 3 that it says that you get, even though we don't have any investment in it at all. So, you know, stonks. Returns with nothing invested. Also, I would like to point out, if you don't have Rampaging Werebeast, alternatively, you can run Stormcrow Aspect in the beginning, because you have to remember your companion stuff's all going to stack. So Stormcrow Aspect is going to make your Ravens do 100% more damage, so you can actually have more AoE and stuff like that early on. Early on, I think running Stormcrow's Aspect is worth it, but later on, I think eventually it's going to kind of fall off. But yeah. Okay, so moving down here to the Herodric Spellcrafting. So I personally didn't think the Herodric Spellcraft was really that interesting or cool. Thought it was pretty boring, but this is what I was going with. Astral Pillar. So the taunted enemies, this is going to it taunts enemies for 4.9 seconds. It comes out every 7 seconds. But whenever your Catalyst, it deals cold damage, enemies damage or chilled, and it deactivates monster explosive effects for 5 seconds, which I just kind of like because I don't like explosive effects. I think there's too many in this game. This is going to have a 30% chance to stun and guaranteed to overpower stunned enemies. So I think that's pretty decent as well. You know, it gives us another way to overpower. Then we have Sapping Crux. Your Catalyst applies vulnerable for 8 seconds. And then we have Reactive Ooze. Invoking your Catalyst grants 20% max resource generation. Although you can kind of do whatever you want here. Like, I was even thinking about Fractured Core, but I don't know if a 10% stacking damage is worth it. But deactivating damage resistance aura is kind of good. Because that's like really annoying, especially the higher up you go in pit pushing. I think Fractured Core might end up being pretty good. But yeah, that's what I'm running for that. And then right here, Ground Slam. Here's Aegis, grants you 15% resist all. And then we have Bastion. He takes a protective position, redirects 90% of the damage that would be dealt to surrounding allies to himself. And yeah, also grants you Unstoppable, which is kind of irrelevant, but it's mainly just a defensive thing. And then enemies affected by Rahir's Ground Slam take 15% increased damage. And then allies affected by Rahir's Bastion deal 25% increased damage. So it's like a 40% damage buff. So that's pretty solid. And then with Variana, just Ancient Harpoons to pull things in. Pretty standard there. All right, moving into the Paragon. We are going to start with Keeper. This is going to give us a bonus to rare nodes. 15% increased non-physical companion damage. We deal lightning damage with our wolves, so this is pretty solid. It also gives us a nice little jump early on here to our damage by increasing these rare nodes. Then go ahead and move right along into Untamed. This is going to give us an 80% multiplicative stacking damage buff. And then we're going to go Wilds here. When it comes to the Paragon, a really thing to notice about it is it's a lot simpler now. Literally, just go, get the legendary glyph, get the legendary node, get the glyph, go to the next board. And then after you get the legendary node, just start going through and picking up things like all resist nodes, damage reduction nodes, all these little side ones. That's pretty much how Paragon works in a nutshell now. It's really not as challenging to do a good Paragon board as it was, I guess, like way back before they did the board cap, right? So, but yeah. So get this for an 80% damage buff, and then come over here. You want Wilds. This is going to give you massive companion damage buff, as well as another critical strike damage buff, and it's going to increase the passive damage of your companions by 130% multiplicatively. So really solid. Moving right along, we're going to go into Heightened Malice. This is going to give us up to a 55% damage bonus for when things are poisoned around us. Typically, it's going to be 40%, like if you're fighting a boss or something that doesn't have ads. So Then we're going to move right along up to here, pick up this poison reduction from poison enemies along the way. And then we're going to go Spirit. This is going to give us a 15% damage amp whenever we crit things. It also gives us yet another critical strike damage buff. So you can see here 14.2%, 14.2%, 40%, 60%. You can see the value you get out of the crit damage and just running crit damage in this build because there's just a lot of crit damage buffs. Then we're going to come up here. We're going to go into Thunderstruck. So I recommend going Territorial here. And the reason why is because it gives you damage to close targets. And early on, this gives you a way to get extra damage to close, which will help you set up getting your full Thunderstruck bonus. But you'll want to pick up the damage to close things here. Make sure you come over here and pick up the damage to close and distant that's right here. And that's like specifically just because it'll help give you more value out of Thunderstruck. And if you don't have Storm's Companion yet, which I would imagine by the time you get to here on your Paragon board, you should have a Storm's Companion. But if you don't, just go into like Survival Instincts first and then go into like Thunderstruck last. Okay. So, yeah. But, also, you'll notice I have these 2 willpower nodes. That's just because I was a little bit short to get the bonus from this, so I just threw my last 2 points in there. Alternatively, if you don't care about the 2% crit, you can just throw the points into like healing received or something like that, because you're going to have pretty much everything by the time you get to like max Paragon, if you even end up getting to max Paragon. So, I almost feel like maybe I should make these builds like based around Paragon 200 and not Paragon 328 or whatever this is. Yeah, but anyways, so yeah, Territorial damage reduction against close enemies also gives you something that's going to boost up your Thunderstruck. And then we're going to come up here and we are going to go into the Survival Instincts tree. This is going to give us a 45% damage buff whenever we're healthy, or whenever we're at full life, when we have 1% increased overpower damage up to 25% for every difference between current life percent and fortified life percent between you and the enemy. So pretty solid. And then Dominate, this gives us huge overpower damage buff. Like, we might as well run it because we're doing werebear stuff. We're going to have access to being able to overpower anyway. And since we're going to overpower, we have like 3 or 4 different ways to overpower on bosses. This is just a 15% damage amp we should have up a lot of the time. So personally, I think this is pretty valid to take. But yeah, so then after, like I said, after you get the legendary node, I would just go back and just start getting anything that has to do with all resist or like max life and damage reduction. So you can come back here, you could pick up like tenacity. If you need armor, then you can come up here, you can pick up some all resist out of this one. Then you can come over here, you can pick up some all resistance here. You can come up here, pick up some max life. Come over here, pick up damage reduction from vulnerable enemies. And we're making things vulnerable with our catalyst, I believe. So Sapping Crux. Alternatively, if you're having trouble making things vulnerable, you can also swap out like Territorial or something like that for Exploit, and that'll give you pretty decent access to vulnerable. But yeah, and then after that, after you get like all this defensive stuff, then you can just kind of get whatever's left. So like, I think like something like this, damage to healthy enemies and max life, or over here I got the lucky hit chance with vulnerable damage, right? But yeah, that's going to be it for the Paragon. But yeah, anyways, I think that's going to really be it for the build. I think I've went over everything for it. But yeah, that's the main difference, is it's going to be a Grizzly Rage companion druid season. So that's kind of interesting. I'm not sure if I'm even going to start druid this season. I might start Spiritborn, I don't know, just to kind of change it up. But it will be interesting to see what people do with companion druid. This is just what I tested and feel is best, just based on what I did on the PTR. But we will see. We'll see what happens. We'll see after I actually play it on live if I want to actually end up changing anything on it or not. Honestly, I'm gonna suspect and say probably not, because I really don't see. Like, I'm just trying to, I kept doing it, like, the math in my head, trying to figure out, like, what other way would there be that would actually beat Grizzly Rage this season? Because I feel you just get so much value out of running Grizzly Rage this season that I don't see it. I think for companion builds, and heck, I don't know, even other builds maybe too, since they made Unstoppable like perma. I don't know. A lot of value in Grizzly Rage this season. But anyways, guys, thanks for watching. Like, subscribe, if you want to see more, and I'll see you next time. Thanks.